Drive past your local dealership today, and you might notice something surprising. Brand new Teslas and SUVs selling for half their original price. Take a closer look, and you'll see the Hertz stickers still clinging to the windows. This isn't a typical sale. It's a liquidation. Thousands of vehicles offloaded almost overnight. The media calls it a fire sale, but what you're really seeing isn't just leftover inventory. It's the charred remains of one of America's most recognizable rental empires. And here's what most aren't saying. This collapse didn't begin at the auction block. It began years ago, with a string of reckless decisions, ignored warnings, and one catastrophic misstep that transformed a market leader into a cautionary tale. So what really brought down Hertz? Who might be next? And could your car, your job, or your finances be the next casualty? Hertz wasn't always in crisis. For most of the 20th century, and even into the 21st, it stood as a shining example of corporate success. Hertz built its empire on a straightforward idea: scale. The company mastered the art of moving cars and people with speed and efficiency. Their airport operations ran like clockwork. Their branding was everywhere, and they had a smart strategy: buying used vehicles directly from manufacturers at discounted prices, renting them out for a couple of years, then selling them for profit. It was a cycle that worked, and it made investors happy, kept customers loyal, and left competitors scrambling to keep up. But then the ground started to shift. The first signs of trouble appeared with the rise of ride-sharing. Companies like Uber and Lyft, initially brushed off as passing fads, began to chip away at Hertz's airport stronghold. Why bother with a rental when a ride was just a tap away? Hertz didn't pivot. It clung to its traditional model: fixed rental locations, rigid time slots, expensive add-ons, while consumer expectations evolved. By the mid-2010s, the market had changed. Hertz hadn't. And then came 2020. When the pandemic hit, global travel came to a standstill. Borders closed, flights were cancelled, business travel evaporated. Hertz's cars sat unused by the thousands, lined up in silent rows like headstones. The company, already burdened with debt from previous expansions, was overwhelmed by the sudden collapse in revenue. In May 2020, it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, shedding nearly 20 billion dirham in debt. There was a moment of optimism. New investors stepped in, fresh leadership took over, and a reorganization plan promised a comeback. But beneath the surface, the fundamental problems never went away. In fact, Hertz was about to take an even riskier leap: a bold bet on electric vehicles and a shiny new image that ultimately pushed the company back toward disaster. Hertz didn't fall because of a single bad year. It fell because it failed to evolve. And the next part of the story wasn't just about missteps. It was about a gamble so extreme, it would seal the company's fate. After emerging from Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2021, Hertz needed a powerful comeback story, proof that it wasn't just surviving, but evolving. So the company made a bold, headline-grabbing move. It announced plans to purchase 100,000 Tesla vehicles, instantly rebranding itself as modern, sustainable, and future-focused. For a brief moment, the market bought the narrative. Tesla's stock jumped, and Hertz executives took victory laps in the media, touting transformation and innovation. But behind the sleek messaging was a rushed, poorly calculated decision that would unravel what little stability the company had left. On paper, the plan was simple: buy Teslas, rent them to eco-conscious customers, and lead the rental industry into an electric future. In reality, the numbers didn't make sense from the start. Hertz paid nearly full retail prices for the vehicles. No fleet discounts, no bulk deals, amounting to billions in upfront costs to replace cars that weren't even the company's core issue. Worse, Hertz had no real infrastructure to support the shift. There was no nationwide plan for charging stations, no widespread training for staff on EV maintenance or operation. Essentially, Hertz dropped a fleet of electric vehicles into a world still built for gasoline and hoped it would somehow work. Customers quickly grew frustrated. Many had never driven an EV, struggled with range anxiety, and found limited charging options, especially outside major cities. When problems arose, local Hertz branches often lacked the tools or knowledge to help. The Teslas became liabilities. Complaints mounted, repeat business dropped. Even minor accidents turned into expensive repairs due to Tesla's unique parts and service requirements. Then came the final blow. In early 2024, Tesla significantly cut the prices of its new vehicles. Overnight, the value of Hertz's massive fleet nosedived. Cars purchased at peak price just 2 years earlier were suddenly worth a fraction of their original cost. On paper, Hertz lost hundreds of millions. When the company tried to sell off some of its Teslas, demand was tepid. Buyers were wary of battery longevity, repair costs, and steep depreciation. The fleet that was supposed to lead the future became a financial sinkhole. Meanwhile, the broader travel rebound Hertz had counted on never quite lived up to expectations. Business travel lagged, tourism was inconsistent, and although some demand returned, it wasn't enough to support the company's oversized, over-leveraged fleet. The Teslas weren't the only vehicles draining Hertz's resources. Traditional combustion cars were also sitting idle, racking up costs while collecting dust. Insurance premiums, storage fees, and interest payments continued to pile up, turning idle assets into mounting liabilities. Hertz didn't just lose money on electric vehicles. It lost time, trust, and its ability to adapt. What was marketed as a bold transformation was, in reality, a financial trap disguised as innovation. In its rush to shed the baggage of the past, Hertz leapt into a future it didn't understand, with products it couldn't support, for customers it hadn't prepared. As the shockwaves rippled through the industry, insiders began asking a deeper question. What else was Hertz selling just to stay afloat? Because the crisis was no longer about the cars, it was about the company's survival. What followed exposed the full scale of Hertz's unraveling. To most observers, the situation looked like a clearance event. Thousands of vehicles flooding the market at steep discounts. But that was just the surface. Behind the scenes, Hertz wasn't merely selling cars. It was dismantling itself, one piece at a time, in a desperate bid for solvency. Office buildings that once served as key regional hubs were sold off. Long-term leases at strategic airport locations were terminated. Customer support centers, once critical pillars of the business, were shuttered. In some cases, even furniture and branded signage were auctioned off to the highest bidder. Worse still, the company began gutting its internal systems. Proprietary fleet management tools, logistics platforms, and valuable data services were either sold in chunks, licensed off, or dismantled completely. Some of this technology was offered to competitors in last-ditch deals. One of the most telling signs of decay was the cancellation of software licenses tied to customer data, inventory tracking, and analytics. These weren't optional tools. They were the foundation of Hertz's operations. Losing them didn't just slow things down, it created chaos. Then came the global retreat. In several countries, Hertz voluntarily surrendered long-held business, licenses, abandoning markets it once dominated. These moves didn't signal a pivot or a strategy shift. They were acts of survival. The company's footprint was shrinking, its operational core was collapsing. And while consumers focused on bargain vehicles, what was really being liquidated was Hertz's corporate identity. When a company starts selling off its own infrastructure, it's not planning for growth. It's bracing for impact. Meanwhile, buyers rushed in, seeing only the surface-level opportunity. Newer cars, big discounts, thousands of options. But just beneath that attractive facade lay hidden risks, traps that were already ensnaring unsuspecting customers. These weren't just cars. They were remnants of a failing system. Rental vehicles are used hard, often cycled through dozens of drivers with no personal investment in their condition. Some treat them carefully. Others treat them like throwaways. That results in unpredictable wear and tear, mechanical strain, and aging that regular maintenance can't fully undo. A car that looks flawless outside might be hiding thousands of dollars in future repairs under the hood. Mileage is another red flag. Many Hertz vehicles, especially electrics, have racked up high mileage in a short span. A 2-year-old sedan with 70,000 miles isn't unusual. While Hertz performed routine maintenance, deeper issues like suspension fatigue, drivetrain wear, or electronic faults often went undetected until they became someone else's problem. What looked like a fire sale turned out to be something far more dangerous. The slow-motion disintegration of a once-dominant company, passing its problems down the line, one discounted vehicle at a time. Then there's the electric vehicle trap. A used Tesla from Hertz might look like a sleek, modern deal, but underneath, it could be hiding serious issues. Many of these cars have diminished battery life, especially if they were repeatedly fast-charged by renters unfamiliar with proper EV maintenance. Replacing a battery can cost tens of thousands of dollars, instantly turning what looked like a great buy into a financial nightmare. The risks don't stop there. Many of these EVs weren't serviced at authorized Tesla centers, raising big questions about warranty validity and long-term reliability. Some of these cars are sold as is, with no warranties, no guarantees, and no protection. Others are funneled through auctions where buyers get no real insight into the car's history, no clear records of damage, accidents, or skipped maintenance. Even when vehicles are labeled as certified, that stamp can be meaningless. Certification varies wildly depending on the seller, and what one dealer calls certified might not meet any official standard. Financing is another minefield. Many lenders hesitate to finance liquidation vehicles, or they only do so at sky-high interest rates. Insurance is getting more expensive too, especially for Teslas, with premiums rising due to the high cost of repairs and parts. So even if the sticker price looks low, you could end up paying the difference, and more, in insurance, loans, or repairs just a few months down the line. The lesson? These aren't just cars. They can be ticking financial time bombs. And unless you know exactly what you're buying, a cheap ex-rental EV could easily cost more than a brand new vehicle. That said, not everyone should panic. In fact, for smart, strategic buyers, this crisis could become an opportunity. If you know how to navigate it, Hertz's liquidation wave might work in your favor. The first rule: don't rush. This isn't a flash sale. It's a research project. Start with documentation. Every car tells a story through its service history, and you need the full narrative, not just a summary on Carfax. Ask for detailed maintenance records. Look for consistent service intervals, repairs done by authorized shops, and signs of preventative care. Walk away from any vehicle with missing history, suspicious repairs, or shoddy aftermarket parts. Next, get the vehicle inspected. A thorough, independent inspection by a qualified mechanic is worth every penny. Don't trust dealership claims or surface-level looks. A professional can spot frame damage, drivetrain issues, battery degradation, and signs of abuse that are easy to miss. If you're buying through an auction, set your budget before bidding, and stick to it. Auction fever is real, and even experienced buyers can get caught in the adrenaline. Know what the car is worth on the open market and build in extra room for taxes, registration, fees, and repairs. If your budget's blown, walk away. A bargain isn't a bargain if it breaks your wallet later. For EVs specifically, battery health is critical. Always request a battery diagnostic report, check the estimated range, and make sure the car is compatible with your local charging infrastructure. If you live in an apartment or lack home charging, an electric vehicle could turn into a frustrating experience instead of a futuristic one. Another smart move is buying through a trusted dealer connected to Hertz's liquidation channels. These dealerships often inspect and recondition vehicles and may even offer limited warranties. You might pay a little more, but if you're not a seasoned gearhead, that added peace of mind is worth it. And finally, treat financing like a separate purchase. Shop around for your loan. Compare rates from credit unions, banks, and online lenders. Don't get locked into a bad deal just because the car looked cheap up front. The key to surviving, and even winning, during this liquidation is to be informed, intentional, and patient. Because in the wreckage of Hertz's fall, there are real deals. You just have to know where to look and how to spot the traps. Multiple lenders are now part of the car buying process, and smart shoppers compare rates closely. It's not just about the interest rate. Watch for hidden costs like loan origination, fees, balloon payments, or prepayment penalties. A bad financing deal can ruin an otherwise solid purchase. The same rule applies across this chaotic market. For every trap, there's a path forward, if you know how to navigate it. But even the savviest buyer has to face a bigger, more uncomfortable question. What if owning a car no longer makes sense at all? Mobility is changing, and fast. The collapse of both ownership and rentals isn't just a footnote in Hertz's downfall. It's a clear signal of a deeper cultural shift. For decades, owning a car was a symbol of freedom. Renting one was a business, essential. Now both models are starting to feel outdated. Let's look at ownership first. The financial dream has soured. Skyrocketing auto loan interest rates, declining used car values, and soaring maintenance costs have made car ownership more of a liability than a milestone. It's no longer just about affording the car. It's about affording the upkeep, the insurance, the depreciation, and figuring out how to resell it without hemorrhaging money. More people are beginning to ask, why take out a 7-year loan for something that loses value the moment you drive it off the lot? At the same time, flexible alternatives are gaining ground. Subscription-based models, micro-leases, car sharing, apps, and monthly access plans are reshaping how people think about mobility. The idea isn't to own the car, it's to have access to one, when and where you need it, with none of the long-term strings. It's Netflix for transportation. Automakers are paying attention. Tesla, Rivian, and even legacy brands like Ford and Toyota are rolling out all-inclusive subscription bundles, insurance, maintenance, roadside assistance, wrapped into a single monthly payment. Not a lease, not a loan, just access. Zoom out again to the rental industry. It's crumbling, quietly but undeniably. Hertz might be the loudest collapse, but they're not alone. Avis and Enterprise are scaling back, closing locations and scrambling to reimagine a model that hasn't evolved in decades. Uber and Lyft didn't just disrupt car rentals, they changed traveler expectations. People don't want to wait in lines, deal with paperwork, or sit through upsells. They want a car at the curb, instantly from an app. Meanwhile, business travel, the backbone of the rental industry, still hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. Remote work has gutted a huge chunk of the demand, and younger generations who grew up on mobile apps and monthly services, many of them don't even have driver's licenses. Rental agencies tried to adapt, rolling out apps, contactless pickups, airport kiosks. But the changes came too late. The empires built on fixed pricing, reservation windows, and airport desks are cracking. And so ownership and rentals find themselves in the same storm, too rigid, too expensive, and too slow. What's replacing them isn't a single new model. It's a patchwork of smarter, smaller, more flexible ones. Peer-to-peer rentals, urban car share pods, pay-per-mile insurance, subscription fleets. The future of mobility won't be about holding keys. It'll be about choosing options. Options that are as easy to change as your streaming plan. Ironically, Hertz tried to move into that future. The Tesla deal was supposed to be the first step, but they lacked the infrastructure, the pricing model, and the customer education to make it work. Instead of leading the shift, they fell right through the cracks. What we're witnessing isn't just a company collapsing. It's the early warning sign of a much broader unraveling. Because Hertz is just the beginning. And now there's a new wave coming. The used car crash. Prices are falling fast, but the market isn't cheering. It's bracing. At a glance, the drop in used car prices might look like good news for everyday buyers, especially after the inflated peaks of 2021 and 2022. But what's happening now isn't a gentle correction. It's a crash, triggered not by shifting consumer demand, but by a tidal wave of fleet liquidations. Hertz led the charge, but they won't be the last. Thousands of corporate-owned vehicles, many well-maintained and just a year or two old, are hitting the market at deep discounts. But here's the catch. Buyers aren't showing up the way everyone expected. The rest of the rental car industry has been quietly retreating, even as Hertz dominated headlines with its collapse. Avis and Enterprise may not have made the same high-profile missteps, but they're navigating the same storm. Their fleets are shrinking, regional hubs are closing, auctions are becoming more frequent, and long-term investments have quietly vanished. While Hertz collapsed loudly, its competitors are simply unraveling in silence. The challenges they face are nearly identical to Hertz's. Business travel hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. Personal travel habits have shifted, and the rise of ride-sharing, car subscriptions, and remote work has cut deep into demand. The cost of maintaining massive, inflexible fleets has surged, and the airport infrastructure that once gave rental agencies a competitive edge is becoming a liability. Travelers today want convenience, not lines or paperwork. They want instant access, not legacy systems. Avis and Enterprise have responded not with transformation, but with contraction. They've slashed orders across all vehicle types, not just EVs. They've sold off office buildings, cancelled airport leases, and scaled back customer service operations. International markets are being abandoned without fanfare, and entire customer demographics are being left behind. This isn't strategic repositioning, it's survival. And the rest of the mobility ecosystem is watching. Dealerships are growing cautious, no longer relying on inflated trade-in margins. Banks are reevaluating the risks of auto lending as collateral values continue to fall. Automakers are revisiting EV production targets and delaying electrification timelines. Startups that once promised disruption are downsizing and softening their goals. The fallout is visible in every corner of the industry. The drop in used car prices isn't a healthy market correction. It's a sign of foundational stress. Vehicles from liquidating fleets are flooding the market, not just increasing supply, but lowering price benchmarks. This has forced sellers to either take steep losses or cling to depreciating inventory. Buyers are holding back, wary of how far prices might fall, which delays recovery and prolongs instability. Even certified pre-owned programs are feeling the strain as consumer confidence wanes. What's unfolding goes beyond the collapse of a few rental giants. The very structure of the car economy is fracturing. The rental industry cracked first because it was most vulnerable, dependent on scale, speed, and predictability. Without those, the model implodes. Hertz was the first casualty, but the quiet contractions of its rivals suggest it won't be the last. The industry is being forced to confront a deeper truth. This isn't just a short-term downturn or a miscalculated shift to EVs. It's a complete unraveling of the old way of moving people. And now everyone, from consumers and dealers to automakers and investors, is left wondering what mobility will look like in the years to come. And more pressingly, how to navigate the chaos that's already begun. Other giants in the rental industry have been taking similar steps, just without the media spectacle. What's unfolding now is not one company's crisis, it's a systemic collapse. Avis and Enterprise, long seen as the stable pillars of the rental market, are downsizing aggressively. The scale may not yet match Hertz's implosion, but the signs are unmistakable. Enterprise, once boasting the largest rental fleet in North America, has begun quietly cutting vehicles from its lineup across major markets. It is closing satellite locations, particularly in suburban areas and smaller airports, where demand has not bounced back. While it frames these moves as optimization, internal reports reveal that Enterprise is grappling with the same core issues Hertz faced: declining rentals, rising fleet maintenance costs, and a consumer shift toward on-demand transportation over traditional car rentals. Avis, on the other hand, has been reducing its capital expenditures and delaying vehicle acquisitions. In late 2023, Avis began liquidating parts of its fleet earlier than scheduled, citing market realignment. Translation: they needed fast cash and could no longer justify keeping aging vehicles on the books. Like Hertz, Avis had leaned heavily into airport rentals, and with business travel still below pre-pandemic levels, those high-traffic locations are no longer the gold mines they once were. The deeper issue here is strategic paralysis. Both companies were caught in the same trap, believing that the rebound from the pandemic would look like 2019. Instead, it looks like something entirely new. Consumers want flexibility, automation, and alternatives that these rental giants were too slow to embrace. Without a bold reinvention, they're bleeding out silently, trying to cut costs faster than the market changes. Just like Hertz, both Avis and Enterprise are now depending more on asset sales to stay above water. That includes thousands of cars now quietly entering wholesale auctions, regional dealer lots, and secondary sales platforms. These aren't just vehicles, they are pressure valves for two companies under financial stress. When multiple rental agencies flood the same used car market at once, The impact is enormous. And yet, this is not the end of the line. The rental collapse is only one piece of a larger crisis, because now automakers themselves are beginning to dump vehicles, and for reasons that are even more unsettling. Automakers are supposed to be the steady hand in the automotive world. These are the industrial giants that plan years in advance, manage production cycles with precision, and weather short-term market shocks with long-term strategy. But that confidence is crumbling. General Motors, Ford, Volkswagen, and even Toyota are now being forced to do what they hate most: scale down production and offload unsold inventory. Why? Because they built too many vehicles for a market that no longer exists. In the rush to recover from the pandemic, automakers ramped up production aggressively between 2022 and 2024. With the supply chain stabilizing and semiconductor shortages easing, factories went into overdrive. Executives bet on a return to traditional demand, especially with pent-up consumer interest and government EV incentives on the rise. But that demand never fully materialized. Instead, consumers were slammed with higher interest rates, inflation-driven cost of living increases, and stricter lending conditions. New car loan approvals dropped, average monthly payments soared past $700, and more Americans began holding onto their cars longer than ever before. The expected buying frenzy turned into hesitation, and now dealerships are overwhelmed with excess inventory. To clear the backlog, automakers are offering massive dealer incentives, factory rebates, and even fleet deals to unload unsold vehicles. In some cases, brand new cars are being offered to corporate fleet buyers at prices well below their sticker value. That means more new vehicles are entering secondary markets with near-zero mileage and driving down the value of used cars across the board. The resale market is not just saturated with rentals from Hertz. It's being crushed by overflow from the automakers themselves. General Motors recently announced it would be cutting production shifts at several plants, citing market realities. Ford is slashing its EV production targets after inventory of unsold electric trucks ballooned. Even Tesla, they should buy, wait, or walk away entirely. The uncertainty is paralyzing the market. No one, from consumers to corporations to governments, seems to have a clear roadmap forward. And that's what makes this crash so different from past downturns. It's not just cyclical, it's structural. Every pillar that held up the automotive market, ownership, financing, insurance, resale, even the promise of future-forward mobility, is under pressure or actively crumbling. This isn't a downturn. You can ride out by holding onto your car a bit longer, or waiting for interest rates to dip. It's a foundational reset. Traditional dealerships can no longer rely on brand loyalty or predictable buyer behavior. Auto lenders are reevaluating risk models, tightening approvals, and pulling back from what were once bread-and-butter products. Even auto repair shops, usually resilient in downturns, are seeing shifts as EVs bring different service requirements. Parts shortages linger, and owners delay non-essential maintenance due to rising costs. For individuals, it means the old rules no longer apply. Buying new might not mean reliability if resale value is uncertain. Buying used might not mean savings if interest rates kill the deal. Leasing might seem smart until your buyout price is underwater or the residual is based on now laughable 2021 valuations. Even walking away from ownership entirely brings challenges. Rideshare prices are up, availability is down, and public transit remains underfunded in most of the US. And so we arrive at the truth that no one in the auto industry wanted to face. The system was never built for flexibility. It was built for volume, for speed, for recurring revenue based on predictable cycles. And now that those cycles have been broken by economics, by technology, by cultural shifts, everything has to change. What's happening isn't just a correction in the market. It's a correction in the mindset. People aren't just reconsidering what they drive. They're rethinking if they should drive at all. They're rethinking whether transportation should be a product you own or a service you use. They're rethinking whether the financial burden of mobility in its current form is worth the cost. The used car market crash is just one symptom. The real transformation is still unfolding, and it won't be measured in interest rates or sticker prices. It'll be measured in how we choose to move, live, and spend in a world where access, not ownership, might become the new normal. Because that's the real question now. Not just about Hertz, but about trust, value, and risk in a world where the old signals no longer mean what they used to. A clean Carfax isn't peace of mind if the whole system is in flux. A great price tag isn't a win if you're stepping into a financial sinkhole. And ownership doesn't feel empowering if it chains you to unpredictable costs and fading resale value. So, what's the move? If you're locked into driving, maybe the smartest play is short-term flexibility, a lease you can walk away from, a subscription service with built-in support, or even car-sharing options if your usage is low. For others, waiting it out, letting the dust settle, letting prices and interest rates recalibrate, might be the best way to avoid becoming collateral damage in a rapidly shifting market.